Right, good day all. So we are discussing our flip side to the point I mentioned yesterday about suspension, right? Remember I said your belief in God must be free from suspension. It must be free from different things. 4 things I mentioned, right? If you look back in my previous video, right? So we are discussing the point your belief in God must be free from suspension, right? Which is denying that God could possess a particular attribute. Right, so we discussed that if you believe in God, your belief must be free from denying that God possesses a certain attribute, right? And I mentioned, like, if you see a judgment taking place over the world, you don't say, hey, this is not God. You accept that certain wrongs was done, and this judgment is perhaps God itself, right? So that's one side of the story, right? That's one side of the story. Another side of the story is actually resisting that judgment, right? Another side could be you standing up and saying, hey, no, we're not taking that, right? Because that judgment could be human imposed. It could be imposed by humans in the act of playing God, right? In the act of playing God, right? So it might not necessarily be an act of God. So this is where your discernment needs to come in now. Your discernment needs to come in. Is what is happening to you, so we're talking about on a personal level here now too, is what is happening to you, or can you differentiate when something is happening to you, if that is in fact a judgment of God, or that is just humans playing the real fool, right? Is it an act of God, or is it an act of human and the use of human technologies, or abuse of humans and abuse of human technologies, right? That is the question that needs to be asked, and that is the discernment that needs to be had when we're talking about judgment and judgment on earth, right? To what extent are humans employed or used in this form of judgment, right? To what extent can you decide that, hey, I do not want to participate in this judgment that has taken place across the earth, right? So this is the flip side to that conversation, yes, to the partial conversation yesterday when we were talking about such the point of suspension and believing in God and being free. Your belief in God must be free from denying that God possesses certain attributes, right? So yes, God has the attribute of judgment, right? But to what extent are you participating in that as human beings? And could you, by virtue of your choice, withdraw yourself and say, no, I do not want to participate in this. I do not want to participate in that, right? So that's the flip side to that, because that statement could be used to conduct all the wrongs in the world, like I was saying before, right? That statement, your belief in God must be free from suspension, right? And I was asked to read through that book, right? So that statement, your belief in God must be free from suspension, right? Meaning that denying that God could possess a certain attribute, right? Denying that God could possess a certain attribute, right? And that attribute being judgment, or this level of judgment, right? So this is what I'm saying. Your discernment must come in and differentiating when this is actually a God's will, right? God's will in carrying out something, or human will in participation of this process, right? So that's this conversation. The flip side to that statement, because anything could happen in the name of saying that God possesses this attribute, or God possesses that attribute, right? So that's the flip side, or another angle, right, to that statement. Everything is not black and white. Certain things can be changed, books can be changed, and in fact books should be changed, right? Like I was saying, there's a particular chapter in the Bible that should be eradicated altogether, right? And if you look back on my previous videos, you will see what chapter is that. It should be eradicated altogether, right? So I'm not talking about eradicating the message. I'm talking about eradicating certain unnecessary, irrelevant, debilitating, denigrating aspects of your scriptures, right? Good.